lots of people out here. I like that. That's nice. Are there any writers in the audience? Wanna-be writers? Could be writers. Okay, everybody wants to be a writer. Okay, there you go. Because it's a fabulous career, just have to let you know. It's been awesome. Let's see. Something you might want to hear. I'm rich. And not just this kind of rich. That's my kids, grandkids. That one over there is my Mr. Mostly Right, because it's been 32 very long years. Yeah, but no, not just that kind of rich. This is not my house. I don't drive this car. Not yet. But relatively speaking, I'm doing okay. So how did I go from this to this in 8 years? Now, something you might not want to hear, this is a serious job. It's not as easy as it seems. You actually do have to work to make this happen. To write, in 11 years, I have published 15 novels, and that is a lot of work. Aspirations are not enough. Success cannot be demanded, it cannot be coerced, and it can't be bought. Success is something that you have to earn. For some of us, it's been a very long journey, and very rarely is it a linear path. My journey to success started, oh my God, I'm gonna be 61 years old at the end of this month. So it started like 60 years ago. I was adopted as a baby by an older couple. My dad was 72 when he adopted me, and my mom was 42. To put that in some perspective for you, he was born in 1883. He was the son of German immigrants into San Francisco, came from a very poor family, built a 6th grade education into a thriving steel company that made a lot of money during World War II. And so for him, he defined self-made man, and what I learned from him was the value of honesty and hard work. My mom loved classic literature, poetry. She had me reading chapter books before kindergarten. I think I was the first 5-year-old in history that could quote Dickens, you know what I mean? But she gave me this love of language and kind of a desire to be a better writer. See, the thing about avid readers is eventually we decide we can do it better. Or at least as well. So, early reader, I studied journalism in college. Unfortunately, I met Mr. Wrong in college and dropped out. I was a young mom, and at this point I had followed my father's footsteps into entrepreneurship. So I had a catering service. Do you guys remember these things called video stores? Yeah, I had a video store in my early 20s. And so I was running a couple businesses and raising a couple kids, and there was no money in the bank. And I started looking for why, and I discovered my ex-husband was using cocaine. So I gave him the choice, cocaine or family. He moved to Albuquerque to get high and continued to get high until about 6 years ago when he had a massive heart attack. He survived. But eventually, I met Mr. Mostly Right, who you saw a little bit later incarnation there earlier, and we moved to Tahoe. At that time, I had sold my businesses. He was in radio, and I had to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And so I'm like, I'm a writer. And he's like, what? He's like, no, you're not. I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer. Because like all those years when I wasn't actually writing for a living, I was writing. I had like drawers full of yellow legal pads with poetry and essays and short stories that I never showed anybody. Eventually, I kind of figured I'd have to show somebody something. So I thought I was going to be the next Stephen King. That didn't work out so well, but I still have a few years left, so maybe we'll see. Instead, I went into freelance journalism. So these are some of the stories I wrote as a freelance journalist. I was a food and wine writer locally, did a lot of regional stuff, skiing stuff, and some of those stories became interesting to me to do on a deeper level. So working with SeaWorld, trainers and also swimming with the orcas off the Puget Sound became interesting to me to write as a nonfiction book for young readers. Also, this is me with Hoot Gibson out at the air races. So I did 20 nonfiction books before I started writing novels. So you can see the orca book, Air Devils, Man's Love of Flight through competition. And so I'm growing a little career as a freelance journalist and as a nonfiction writer. And then maybe you don't know my story. Somewhere along the way, my daughter, who at 17 years old was a straight A+ student, 150 IQ, her dream was computer animation. She was going to the Art Institute of Seattle. That was where she was headed. And on a summer visit to my ex-husband, her father, she got turned on to crystal meth. And her dreams at 17 years old were over. It's been 21 years that we've been dealing with this addiction with her. She's been in and out of the addiction. And 6 years into that, she went to prison for fraud and ID theft for writing bad checks to support their drug habit. And when she went to prison, this was the weekend before she went to see her dad. I needed to know what happened to my kid. So she had gone to prison, and I decided that I needed to write a book for young people about her journey, to try and turn other young people away from the same path that she chose. And that became my first novel, Crank, which published 11 years ago. Now, when you're writing a book and you're like, I think that's really, really good, you can't know it's going to publish, but I think it really had to publish, and then it publishes, and then this book has gone on to become really a phenomenon. 2 million copies in print around the world currently, and it all started, see my journey this way, nothing linear about it, but this is not necessarily how I would have chosen to get here. But that I've gotten here and I'm doing what I'm doing is very important to me, and I'm gratified that I've been able to change some lives. And we'll get on with that in a bit. Was I an overnight success? Because this is my formula for success. Talent, perseverance, luck, success. There's a luck factor in that. There's a talent factor, of course. Talent is something you can grow, though. Talent is something that you can deepen as you get older. Perseverance, meaning all those submissions and rejections, not giving up on those, trying something new, trying something else. I'm not Stephen King. This is who I am. And mostly, now the original picture had a very bad word down there, so I fixed that for you. The courage to write stories that no one else will. The courage to write stories that matter to you. The courage to write stories that matter to readers. And that's not always an easy thing to find and to encourage. But let's say you have written that book, and you've revised your book, and you've revised your book. I'm in the middle of revision hell right now, just so you know. I'm revising these 2 books, and I'm like so stuck. I'm like, I hate this process very much, but it is part of it. So let's say you've written the book, you've revised it, you celebrated with your besties because you've finished your book, you've searched for the right agent, and voila, you have found him or her. After months and months of waiting and waiting, you get no, not that call. That call. Your story is going to be published. Now what? More revision, more revision. You're not going to like this part of the process. More waiting, more waiting. And while you're waiting, you're building a platform. Because what every author needs, what every successful writer needs, is finding your audience. You find your audience by touching your readers with the beauty and the power of your words. this is not the prize you're after. You'll be very disappointed if that's what you come here for, probably. I would love to have this on one of my books, but I don't have it yet. This is not why I write. You don't write for awards. You don't write for reviews. You write to share your light. You write for your readers to write you a letter like this. This is the prize. And I know I'm not supposed to read from a piece of paper, but this is one of my readers' letters, and I want to get her words right. I'm honored to get this opportunity to tell you that Crank saved my life, opened my eyes to the world I was exposing myself to and rapidly getting drowned in. And then, 2 years later, it did the very same for my little brother, who found it in my moving boxes and read it thinking it was a teen book about kids doing drugs. He was doing meth that night he read it with his at-that-time girlfriend. They quit the very next day. Thank you, Ellen. You've touched our lives forever, and I'll always be more thankful than you'll ever know for your books. This is one of around 200 messages I get from readers a day. Emails, Twitter, Facebook, Goodreads. Oh, it's quite time-consuming, and part of that work I was telling you about, sharing your light with the world, telling the stories only you can tell, only the way you can tell them, that is the key to success. But always, you have to remember, in the midst of all this celebrating and success and travel and book touring and signing autographs and being famous, that writers write. Because without that, there can be no. Thank you, guys.